When we talk about how the United States came into existence, it's important to understand that this is not the story of a single event, but a long journey that began long before the word America even existed. Thousands of years before Europeans arrived, life was already thriving on this continent. People came there from Asia during the Ice Age, when a land bridge existed between the continents. These were not just isolated groups, but waves of migrants who gradually spread farther and farther. Oceania, vast territories, from cold northern forests to warm plains and mountains. Over time, these people developed into many different nations, whom Europeans later called Indians. They did not have one unified country, but that does not mean they were primitive. They had their own traditions, religions, systems of governance, and even advanced civilizations. Some of these civilizations reached a high level of development. For example, the Maya built cities, studied the stars, and developed complex calendars. The Aztecs created a powerful state with a huge capital where hundreds of thousands of people lived. The Inca built an entire empire with roads that connected mountains and valleys on the territory of what would become the United States. Developed peoples also lived. Some practiced agriculture, growing corn and beans, while others were nomadic and hunted animals. Life was diverse and full, and the continent was far from empty. Everything changed at the end of the 15th century, when Europeans began searching for new sea routes. In 1492, the navigator Christopher Columbus set out on a voyage hoping to find a route to India, but instead reached the shores of a continent that was new to Europe. He did not realize that he had discovered something entirely new, but his journey marked the beginning of enormous changes. After him, Spaniards, French, English, and representatives of other European nations began arriving in America. They did not just explore the lands, they began to conquer them. Spain was especially active, quickly subjugating vast territories in Central and South America. Conquistadors destroyed local states, took gold, and established their rule. For the indigenous peoples, this was a catastrophe. Wars, diseases brought from Europe, and forced labor led to a sharp population decline. Later, France and England moved northward. The French were more focused on trade and exploration of inland territories, while the English began establishing permanent settlements. On the eastern coast of North America, England founded 13 colonies. Different kinds of people went there. Some sought wealth, others freedom, and some simply wanted to start a new life. Gradually, the colonies developed, cities were built, farms appeared, and trade expanded. Despite being far from Europe, they remained under the authority of the English crown. At first, this did not cause serious problems, but over time, tensions began to grow. After wars in Europe, England fell into debt and decided to increase taxes on the colonies. The colonists did not like this. They believed their rights were being violated because, after wars in Europe, England fell into debt and decided to increase taxes on the colonies. The colonists did not like this. They believed their rights were being violated because they had no representation in the English Parliament. This led to a wave of discontent, protests, and boycotts. Gradually, the conflict intensified. The situation became so tense that in 1775, armed clashes began, which turned into the American Revolutionary War. The colonies united and began fighting against one of the most powerful nations of that time. It was a difficult and dangerous war, and victory was not guaranteed. However, the colonists received support from France, which played an important role. In the midst of the war, in 1776, the representatives of the colonies adopted the Declaration of Independence, a document that proclaimed that the colonies were no longer part of England and were becoming independent. This moment is considered the birth of a new country. The war continued for several more years and ended with the victory of the colonies in 1783. England officially recognized their independence. But that was not the end. It was necessary to create a new state and determine how it would be governed. In 1787, the U.S. Constitution was adopted, becoming the foundation of the country's political system. George Washington became the first president, and under his leadership, the formation of a new nation began. Over time, the country began to expand. Its territory grew through purchases, treaties, and the settlement of new lands. People moved westward in search of land and opportunity, who lost their lands and were forced to relocate. The history of this period is complex and often tragic. In the 19th century, a serious conflict arose within the country between the North and the South. The main cause was slavery. The southern states depended on slave labor, while the northern states opposed it. The contradictions became so severe that in 1861, the American Civil War began. It was one of the most difficult chapters in the country's history. The war ended with the victory of the North, the preservation of the Union, and the abolition of slavery. After that, the United States began to develop rapidly. The country experienced industrial growth, the emergence of new technologies, the construction of railroads, and the growth of cities. In the 20th century, it began to play an important role on the global stage, participating in major conflicts and influencing international politics. Over time, the United States became one of the most powerful countries in the world, with a strong economy, advanced science, culture, and technology. Thus, gradually, through thousands of years of development through discoveries, wars, conflicts, and changes, the country we now know as the United States came into being. It is a story not only about the creation of a state, but also about people, those who lived there originally, those who came later, and how their interactions shaped the modern world. This expansion was accompanied by conflicts with indigenous peoples. Like and subscribe, and by everyone.